hard work is hard work for a reason. It's definitely not easy. Sometime last year, I'd gone to visit my brother and we're having quite an interesting conversation. And then he said something. He said, when you put in so much energy into something, when you put in so much energy into achieving a particular thing, at some point it responds to you. But in my questioning manner, I looked for every possible way to counter that particular statement, and I just didn't find any. I found out that it was largely true, excluding village people factors, of course. You're welcome once again to my YouTube channel, Staying with Eve, and I'm more than excited to actually have you stay with Eve. Now, on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about a topic that largely affects me, myself, and the topic is growth. I'm going to be talking about, I don't know if it's growth or growth, but I'm not ready to be doing that thing. I don't have that strength. So growth, we're going to be talking about how to really identify if you are growing and how to really grow. This topic personally resonates with me because I've struggled with growing in certain areas of my life, and I feel I've gone ahead in a certain way, and I mean little accomplishments. I can give you a few nuggets. So when I think about growth, there are two concepts that come to mind, or maybe three, but I'll talk about the third one later on. 3 instances. The first one, when I think about growth, I think about the building right in front of my house, and this is the building actually. As at the time when I had packed into this place, that's 1 year ago, this particular building was not here, but right now it has been worked on and it's looking all beautiful and all marvelous. And then passing by there every day, I just got to realize that the growth process is truly a process. It is something that requires a lot of pouring in to eventually achieve a particular aim. Now, the second concept I think about when I'm talking about growth, when I think about growth, is physical growth first off. So you know how you never really realize how much you've grown until you bump into a picture, an old picture of yours, and then you're like, oh my god, I was really this small. Or maybe when an old relative that doesn't live with you comes by and is like, oh my god, you're all grown right now. These instances really show me, or they've come to show me, that most times when we are growing, both physically and intentionally, it's usually not known to us. Like, we do not realize that we're actually growing. The difference between physical growth and growth in any other aspect of our lives, let's say in your spiritual life, in your career, in your finances, in your academics, or whatever aspects of your life you might want to grow in, the difference between this aspect and the physical type of growth is the intentionality that comes with it. Yes, to grow in every other aspects of your life, you need a certain level of intentionality. Like, I really want to grow, recognizing that there's a need to grow, there's a need to be ahead of where you currently are at, right? And coming to that realization is usually the first step. I like that the principle remains the same regardless of whatever aspects of your life you choose to grow in. And that principle is the principle of intentionality and the principle of putting in the work. And that's where the problem is. That's where most people, myself included, that's where we encounter the problem, the aspect of pouring in the work. Because hard work is hard work for a reason. It's definitely not easy. Number one is consistency. I battle with the problem of consistency a lot. I think I mentioned that in my first video. It's nothing to be proud of, honestly, because it holds you back from achieving a lot of things. And I strongly believe that anybody who has gotten to the point where they've conquered the problem of inconsistency, then I think they've solved a large amount of their problem. The next reason I think that might prevent people from growing is the aspect where the results of intentional growth are most times not quick. Yes, imagine doing something for over a period of time and you're not seeing results. The concept of growth is that it builds over the years. It builds because that awareness that you're growing has not yet hit you. We tend to give up on it, on that process, as quickly as possible, and that's where the problem starts from. That's very disconcerting, trust me, and it's enough to make you give up. But then remember that if you even give up, you never really become whatever you have envisioned yourself to be. Now, the difference between who you currently are and who you want to be is most times a growth gap. Definitely, it has to be a growth process. And now that growth process is very, very tedious. Depends on how you think about it. Some people actually think about it in a different way. It's not to deny the fact that there has to be a lot of work being put in to actually close up that growth gap. I won't say there's a particular point where you say you're finished growing, right? In this life, in every sphere, there is a continuous growth, but definitely there are certain levels that you get to and you're like, okay, I've hit this milestone, I want to hit the next milestone, and all of that. That's how you keep improving at whatever it is you do. Now, talking about the growth gap, this reminds me of a particular event I attended last year. They had told us to write our biography. That sounds very very, I don't know. Write your current biography, where you currently are at, and where you want to be in, let's say, 5 years or however. When I came back home, I tried doing that and I wrote my current biography, and it looked empty to me, right? It looked empty to me, but then there were a few achievements compared to if I had written that in primary 5. It would have been so funny. And now, after having done that, I sat back and I realized that the difference between where I currently am and getting there, there's a lot of growth to be done. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of work to be put in. It's easier to say things. Words are easy. They're easier than actions. So it's easier to pen those words down. But when you come back to think about the amount of time, amount of work that has to go into whatever you've written down to eventually achieve it, you might even give up, because you're looking at something so beautiful, something so fulfilling, and then you're also looking at the work that has to be put to get you there. It's enough to even say, I know they do again. But writing that at that point in time was an eye-opener to me, and it kind of serves as a track record, so to say. How do I grow? I like that I'm actually making this video because I strongly believe that it's something I can really come back to. I'm not there yet. I'm not talking from a place of perfection, certainly not. But I'm talking from a place of personal experience. I've been through the school of hard knocks, trust me. And I don't know if I'm completely out yet, but I mean, I've gotten a few experiences to share. And I know growth is something that a lot of us really struggle with. And it's not enough to hear words, motivational talks around growth. It would do you better to actually put it into practice. I'm talking to myself right now. How can I grow? Now, the first standpoint is realizing the need to grow. Knowing the need, knowing the eventual reward can actually be a driving force for you to continue. So the first thing is to choose what areas of your life you feel you really need to grow in. Trust me, you need to grow in every area of your life, so you can as well merge different aspects of your life and just grow wholesomely at once. So in talking about how to grow, just think of what happens when you're being told to climb a mountain, a very high mountain. You have a destination in mind. You have where you want to be, and these things have to be somewhat clear-cut to you. That's where the awareness factor comes in. You know the destination you have in mind, which in this case is the tip of the mountain. That's your destination. Now, in order to climb the mountain, there are tools you would need to do the climbing, including the time factor. What are the things I would require to eventually get me to that destination that I want to be, which in this case is the top of the mountain? Now, you begin to ask yourself questions depending on what you want to grow at. Up next, you gather the resources you would require for climbing the mountain. Now, this is just a mountain illustration. When it comes to real life activities, you might pick up your resources along the way. Now, having gathered, the next thing is to actually begin your journey. Sometimes there are some journeys you actually start off even without the resources. If I'm climbing a mountain, at some point I'm going to sleep. At some point I'm going to get tired, I would want to rest, I might get frustrated right that I even start this journey in the first place, and all of that. Now the decision after getting those moments is what will determine whether you eventually get to the mountain top or remain stuck in the middle, or probably at the roots of the mountain. If I'm climbing the mountain, I might sleep countless times but then decide to continue afterwards. Another person might sleep and follow there and still sleep the normal sleep and not continue climbing the mountain. But the truth is that for both choices, there are different consequences for each of the choices. If you sleep countless times, the longer it's going to take. Now if you sleep a few times, it's going to take less longer time. If you sleep and continue sleeping from there, like continue sleeping, you're never going to get to the mountain top. Going into how to grow proper. First off, awareness. Determine which aspects of your life you'd want to grow in. The next thing, you gather resources. Find out what you need for that journey that you're about to take on. What are the things that you need? The knowledge you get is potential power, but when you execute that knowledge, it yields greater. Next thing, you make sacrifices towards that your growth process. Sometimes it's your sleep, sometimes it's cutting down on some frivolous activities. You might need to cut down on some things to accommodate your new growth process. It might take friendships, it might take your sleep, your money, your finances, different things depending on the aspect of your life that you're planning to grow on. Just know that there's a sacrifice to make. Time is also a sacrifice. Now the next thing is to follow through with discipline, going at the pace which you have set for yourself. Discipline is what would eventually get you to that final place. Just as I said, consistency. Procrastination it's a very bad thing. Most times when we're talking about barriers to success, we talk about other things, but we forget to talk about ourselves being the greatest barrier to our own success. So following through with discipline is very much important. To follow whatever you've outlined for yourself, follow through with it with discipline. It's also very important to recognize that you really cannot get to where you want to be on your own. You can most times only learn if others have gone ahead of you. So as much as we're trying to get resources or trying to learn on your own, in some aspects of your own growth, you might need to attach yourself to people that have been in those areas before, and so that you will not also pass through the school of hard knocks that they themselves must have gone through to be where they currently are. So having people that have gone ahead for you to learn from is so much of a blessing, and you should definitely not hesitate to jump on that opportunity when it comes your way. It's important to get our younger ones, if you have younger siblings, if you have young friends, if you have teenagers in your space, it's very important to get them to be aware of how important it is to just start early with intentional growth, the intentional growth process. It can be as little as reading books, it can be as little as studying your Bible. Honestly, it's really not little, because it builds over time and then eventually becomes something so marvelous to catch. Anybody can grow at any point in time. I'm just saying based off of my personal experience. No pressure actually, you can work at your own pace, but then a brick a day, a block a day eventually builds the house. Now, as I gladly round up, I'm going to leave you with the law of diminishing intent. Now, the law of diminishing intent states that the longer you wait to do something you actually are supposed to do now, the higher the chances are that you would never really do it. You never really get ready by waiting, you actually get ready by starting. And the truth is that some of us like to have everything figured out from the beginning. I don't know if it's a good thing, I really don't know if it's a bad thing either, but I would say that it's better to start the journey, and as you go, the path, the way begins to appear to you. Just start, just do it right now, and then you'll be so glad that you did. I strongly urge you to go out of your way to seize and to seek for growth opportunities as though your life fully depends on it. Whatever it is that would eventually improve your life in the future, just do it, and you'll be so glad that you did. Do not forget to also ask God and ask for his help in this particular aspect. It might be a struggle for you, just as it currently is still a struggle for me, but then I know there's a way out, and the way out is asking God for help and making up your mind to actually get the work done, because your intentionality has to also be there. Thank you so much for staying with me and having to hear all I have to say.